Hello, hello, hello. Well, welcome everybody. Again, my name is Zach and I work here at LeadSimple in customer success as well as deep in the weeds on the software side. So I'm excited to be on the call today. Looks like we've got about half of the people have joined so far. So we're going to have a little bit of a 5-minute wait. If you guys want to pipe up and say where you're coming from, I recognize most of these names. Yes, Steve, this is being recorded and it will be accessible at the same URL. So that is where you'll be able to find the recording. If you want to share it with anybody afterwards, it's totally supported. We'll also be posting it on our blog later as well. So just to make sure you're on the right webinar, hopefully I can talk today. Today we're going to be talking about managing processes day to day and basically day-to-day workflow automation. So we're going to be talking about tasks and how stages influence those, what are stop tasks, what are required tasks, how your task page really works, how to manage instructions well, your communication tasks as well, how to track your emails, texts, and build that into your process more, talk about conditional logic and a few features we've added there to make that better. And then also some details on your dashboard for each individual process and how to manage that. So that's kind of what we're gonna be talking about today. We're gonna be running through some examples. We're actually gonna be taking a look at our new tenant content as well today and running through an example of a tenant deal to show off some of these features. And then throughout the whole time, if you ever have a question, there's an ask a question option down at the bottom of your screen. And you can ask a question at any time, and then I'm going to get to those at the end. So if you have any questions, just throw them in there, and we'll get to them at the end. So yeah, I hope everyone's doing okay. It's pretty crazy times still, pretty unprecedented overall, but I'm thankful that we can be on the call and be able to go over LeadSimple, and hopefully it's really helpful for you guys. So we're going to wait a few more minutes for people to join and then kick things off. All right, looks like we're getting some more people joining. Again, you can pipe up, let me know where you're coming from. Most of you, I already know exactly who you are. But there's some new faces too, so it'd be great to know where you guys are coming from. Oh, that's great. I bet it's pretty and sunny down there in the Bay Area. It's actually pretty sunny here up in Washington State. So nice, Ashley, Southwest Florida. Sweet. Fort Lauderdale in Colorado. I actually still have yet to make it to Florida. I know that's crazy, but I do need to make it there at some point. Austin, hey, Eric. Good to have you on. Billy, Denver, Georgetown. Haven't made it to Georgetown yet, but in Austin, though. All right. I'm excited to get on this call. So again, this is going to be a little bit more of an in-depth look at automation within LeadSimple and automating your workflows. And we're going to be looking too at our new tenant pipeline content. I know a lot of you use LeadSimple already for your owners, but might not be for your tenants. And so I just want to go over a little bit of that use case. And that's what you're seeing on the page here. This is our demo account that we'll be going through, and we'll be focusing mainly on the John Smith lead at the top, which I'll start in just about 1 minute. I'm going to wait just for a few more people to jump on. All right, almost. I actually haven't been to Virginia either. That's another place I need to visit. Okay. All right, looks like we have pretty much everybody on now, so I'm going to kick things off. Again, my name's Zach, and I work here at LeadSimple in a customer success role, so that's why I'm talking to you guys today and going over this webinar. But I actually am behind building a lot of features in LeadSimple as well. So you can complain to me about anything that you really want, and who knows, I might actually implement it and change it. So feel free. Again, we're always looking for feedback from all of you. So feel free to ask your questions, leave feedback, and we really do take that to heart and implement as much of it as we can build into our roadmap. So definitely feel free to reach out. All right, so to get started, again, we're looking here today, instead of looking at the owner pipeline like we did on the last webinar, then we're actually going to start in the tenant pipeline. So basically, how you would use the tenant pipeline within LeadSimple is to track your prospective tenants. And that might sound off the wall at first. You might be like, oh, well, we can use ShowMojo or Tenant Turner to manage all of that. You can use those still to manage a lot of the pieces of the process, but it's not really complete. It doesn't represent all of the steps from new inquiry all the way to application being approved or losing that tenant. Also, it doesn't allow you to have the lost tenants in a place where you can actually nurture them, because when you have 5 people that apply for a property, you have to take the first one that is approved. You actually have, if there were 5, you actually have 4 people that would be great to continue to market to. And so that's one thing we've seen a lot of people do, is to take those 4 tenants that they lost on that particular property, but market to them for other properties, because you know exactly what they're looking for. You know exactly what the price range is. So you're able to use that. And LeadSimple obviously has all the communication tracking that you use for owners, but you can focus and use it on tenants as well. Obviously, tenant inquiries and all of that are lower value in general, but they're still of some value. You can convert those leads into buyers, obviously into other tenants if you have other properties. So it's great to use LeadSimple to actually track your tenant inquiries, even on top of using Tenant Turner and other software to schedule your showings or manage that. We're actually seeing a lot of people, though, just kind of go with Calendly plus LeadSimple, because you can use Calendly to schedule all of your showings. And I won't get into that in too much depth, but it'd be something maybe to consider if you're thinking about more consolidation of your software right now, which I know a lot of people are. All right, so enough about that. Again, this is a dashboard for tenants. This is our demo account. So I'm jumping into John Smith, and we're going to walk through a few things in relation to that. So first off, as most of you know, obviously you have stages within LeadSimple, and each stage is a milestone in your process. So we're looking at the tenant process here, basically, but it's a sales-focused process. That's why it's under your leads. And then obviously we've launched operational processes that are very similar with some slight differences. But we're going to start today looking, obviously this is the first stage of the tenant pipeline, and it's new inquiry, and we're asked to categorize it. So it's basically, what type of request is this, and move it to the appropriate stage. So this is a stop task. So we won't schedule any other steps in this process until I complete this task. And basically this stage is really just a holding stage for us to jump to the appropriate stage in the process. So in this case, this is just a general inquiry from John Smith about a property, and I am going to move him to that stage. When I move the stage, obviously you can see it automatically schedules the task for me. I don't have to reload the page or anything. Most of you guys are familiar with this, but that's how your stages influence your tasks. And one thing I wanted to note on that is required tasks. So this is something that some of you are using, some of you may not be, but you can actually have required tasks set, and even if you change stages, they will stick. They will not be removed until that user checks them off, and then it will show up in the activity that they completed that task. So first off here, and that's a little bit about required steps, we have a call. So the first thing to do is try to get in touch with John Smith. He's reached out with a general inquiry. We're going to try to get in touch and schedule a showing, hopefully on the property that he's interested in, or figure out what type of property he's interested in. So one thing I also wanted to highlight was task instructions, which most of you are starting to be more familiar with. But task instructions allow you to have more detailed steps or even a call script. So this is a good example of a very brief call script, but it's basically, these are my 3 goals. Understand their number 1 question, push them to schedule a showing for one of our available properties and follow up with an email, including the houses you discussed. So what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to click call to do this. So I'm going to call. All right. And you saw it automatically completed that task. I'm actually getting a call on my phone right now, which I'm not going to pick up, but I would call out to John Smith. It completed that task. And the next task here that automatically showed up was, hey, did we schedule a showing on the call? So I finished that call with John Smith and like, cool, yes, there was a showing scheduled. And the detailed instructions here tell me to set the meeting scheduled custom field to whether or not a meeting was scheduled. So I jump down here to the details and I can set when the showing was scheduled. So we, let's say, scheduled the showing for Friday at 9 a.m. and we'll hit save. Now, what's cool about that is a custom date that I decided to add to the tenant pipeline. You can add custom data to all your different process types, to your different pipelines that you have, as well as your property and contacts. So, nickname is a good example here. And then I can use that custom field in my email templates or in Conditional Logic. So that's something we'll go over a little bit later. But now that I said that we've scheduled a showing, what's cool is we actually have conditional steps here. And the conditional step is basically, since I said I set the time that we're going to have a showing, then the next step that's scheduled is for me to move to the showing scheduled stage. So I just skip, I go straight to showing scheduled. And what's cool here is you can see that we have 24-hour email and text reminders that are automatically scheduled to go out 24 hours before we set the showing date and time. So I don't have to remember to do any of this. I just moved to showing scheduled. The tenant is going to get a text from me and an automated email without me having to remember 24 hours before our scheduled time. And we were able to schedule a meeting task at the time that we have that scheduled down below. So we're using that custom date to power this, which is pretty cool. So I don't have to remember to send this automated because this is a template. And you can see here, we actually input the time that we said that we were going to be at the property. And then we also have the reminder email as well. So yeah. It's pretty cool how you can automate both of those things. You won't have to remember to do that. And then let's say we're just going to jump ahead. So I'm just going to send these really quick to John Smith, pretend like it's, next Friday. And then we meet at the property. And so we've met at the property. And if the prospect showed up, they did show up, let's say, to the property. So obviously this will be later. This is on the 9th is when this is what is scheduled because our showing was on the 8th. So I'm just going to jump to showing completed. And then the first email, this is a manual email template that's telling us, hey, request the application info. So we can do that. And again, here's a full template that's written out. And just to note as well, this content that I'm going through right now is actually available. And we can have a link that's sent in our follow-up email to you guys for those of you that are interested more in the tenant use case. I figured I wanted to, as I'm showing you these different workflow day-to-day automation features within LeadSimple, I wanted to do it on the tenants pipeline because it's a use case that a lot of people are using, but not everybody. So anyway, we'll include a link where you can actually clone this content into your account if that's something that you're interested in doing. And you get this content as well as the templates as well. And that's completely for free. And there'll be definitely some adjustments that you'll make. You want to read through the email templates and update some of the custom information there. But yeah, it gets you a long ways in just having this process set up. All right, so yeah, again, we are able to fully track and send your email and calls, text messages within this process. And I could keep going through this. I think I'm going to pretty shortly here jump to the application approved or signed lease stage. So we would go from showing completed, application submitted, and these all have their steps associated with them, just like we've seen up to this point. But I actually want to jump to signed lease here really quick. We enjoy our confetti because that's fun. And then we get, these are the tasks that are associated with this stage. So sending a congratulation email with next steps to the tenant. So I can do that. This one doesn't have a template, but it could easily. And then notify the property owner that their property has been leased. Again, this could have a template as well. And what I wanted to show you and why I jumped to the end here is I want to create a move-in process, which makes perfect sense. So you have your tenant lead, they've signed the lease. The first thing we're going to do is start the move-in process. And this one's kind of cool because it's going to show a little bit of how relative due dates can work. So a move-in, and what's cool here as well is, I'll just show you. So this is a create process task. When I action it, it automatically pulls in the property, automatically pulls in both owners. So we're working here with North Pole. So we have Santa and his wife here and our tenant. So it automatically pulled in all of that, which is great. And then we can set the due date to the time that we expect the move-in to be complete. And we're going to set that to the 16th, let's say. So by 5 p.m. on the 16th, that would be great. Hit save. And now I'm going to jump back to that tenant lead. So we still have those emails that we need to send, but you can see now in sub-processes, we've tracked that the move-in has been triggered. And it's still assigned to me, but at this point, you could, if BDM role or leasing agent doesn't handle the move-in, they probably will, but if they weren't, then you can always assign it to another person. So if I wanted to hand this off at any point, then I can assign it. And now you can see what's cool is based on the due date that we have, 4 days before the due date is when all of these other tasks are scheduled. So you can set it up, your due dates for tasks relative to other dates that you have, either the custom dates that you've set up, the due date on the process. It's really flexible. And I'll jump into the settings to show you guys a little bit of how that's done. And again, these tasks are all added to my to-do list. They won't show up until they're due, and then I'll get them in my daily agenda reminder, as well as they'll always be visible in my tasks page. So yeah, one thing I also want to make sure we covered is a little bit more about conditional logic. So I'm going to jump back out here to the settings. And again, this is your settings for move-ins. And I'm actually going to jump back to the tenant process. So for tenants, going to go to its stages and workflows. And again, this is the content that we can provide to you guys, which a lot of you may have already seen, but this is completely free content that we wrote to manage a tenant, potential tenant pipeline, which is, yeah, you guys will be able to have full review of this, and we don't have time to go into everything. But I wanted to get into a little bit more on the conditional logic side. So I'm going to jump into the general inquiry stage, and we actually have a lot of tasks here, obviously, and basically one thing I wanted to highlight again was stop and required tasks. So some people find this a little bit confusing, but it makes a lot of sense once you think about it. So a stop task means that this step must be completed before we schedule the next task. Okay. So if it's not a stop task, what will happen is right when you move a process into this stage, or in this case, move a tenant lead into this stage, then if I make this not a stop task, it will schedule the call and this to do, because it will schedule up until the first stop task. When I complete was showing schedule for the call, then it will schedule the next until the next stop task. So you can have groups then of tasks that are scheduled, and you can have stop points at which you say, no, don't continue until this one's completed. And some processes, you won't need very many stop tasks. Other processes, you might want everything to be perfectly sequential, okay? Also, you can have sticky or required tasks, and these will not go away even if this lead or process changes stages, okay? So that's basically making sure that they, whoever's assigned to this lead or to the process that has this task has to check it off. And then that will be shown in the audit trail and activity feed for that deal or process forever. So you can be able to follow up with people like, hey, you said you called them, you know, where's the call recording? Where's the actual notes that you're supposed to make from that call? And why aren't you moving your processes forward? So another thing that most of you are familiar with, but you can assign different steps to override the assignee to anyone on the team. So you can override the assignee as well as set a reminder. And now for conditional logic, this is something I wanted to get into a little bit. So you can see here, the first step is to call the prospect, okay? So we called them, we called John Smith, and then by calling them, it completes that task and it moves to the next task, which was a showing scheduled on the call. So that's the question. Now, this only is displayed if the showing scheduled custom field that we added is empty. If it's set, we know a showing scheduled was set up, and then we don't even ask. We're like, we have a scheduled time, doesn't matter, don't need to schedule this task. So that's something we added a little bit recently, is to have the is empty and has a value options for a lot more fields. So I could also add a condition. Let's say if deal comments are empty, then I could do that, and then I could say, hey, make sure to update the comments field too, with details from the call, let's say. That's just an example. There's really limitless examples on what you could do there. And then you have this ability to print out the different fields from the property actually or from the process or deal into the instructions. So again, I wanted to highlight that conditional logic. You can have as many conditions as you'd want here, and then you can select them all to be true, or just one of them has to be true for that step or task to be scheduled. So as far as making sure that people enter the correct data, you can have steps in your process that only show up if the data that you want to be present isn't present. So that's just something to keep in mind as you're defining processes. If they've already set the move-in date, then you don't need a task that checks whether or not it's, or that tells them to set the move-in date, because they already have. So you can basically build a really flexible set of to-dos, and this checklist can basically totally morph and change based on the data that's been entered up to that point. Another thing I wanted to note is because we have some questions about the on-track and off-track options on a process. So basically this is on the dashboard of a process. Let's jump back to the move-ins that we were looking at. So I wanted to explain this on-track indicator. So basically what this is it's kind of a custom status setting that we are tracking to tell you what's on track and off track. So this green obviously means good. It's on track because there's no overdue tasks. So we'll tell you why it's green. No overdue tasks. If it is orange, which it will be if I jump in here and change one of the due dates. So I'm just going to bump this back, make it overdue, let's say. Okay, hit save, and then you will see now it's off. It's a warning. It's off track, but but it's not yet totally overdue. Basically, the tasks are off track, but the process itself is not overdue. So what this allows you to do with that status is you can add your filters based on that. If you want to see all the overdue processes in a particular process type. And so you can have this filter. So if I want to save this view, because I can save custom filter views, hit save. And now we have a tab that's always going to be there. We can edit it too, but so I can see all the overdue. So we don't have any overdue move-ins right now, obviously. Jump to owner onboarding and go to, these are other ones that we built. So overdue, we have 15 of those for owner onboarding. We have one that's just off track. I can look at the different users. So this one, all of Matt's owner onboardings and their statuses, as well as Chris's overdue. So these are completely customizable, as some of you already know, and you can build them to really build some more filtered views of your dashboard. One other thing I wanted to tell you about too is you have access to customize the columns as well for any one of these views. So the columns can actually be different for each view, and you can track any of the custom data that you've added as well. So if you can do this on your leads too. So if I jump here and I want to see when their showing was scheduled, we have a limited number of columns here, but if I get rid of created at and then click showing scheduled, change columns, then I can see the showing is scheduled here at 9 a.m. for John Smith. And then these ones do not have a showing schedule. So, and this is now custom view. I'm actually going to save this and I'm going to override the all view. So now all will have that column. So that covers a lot of the things I was going to go over with. One thing that I was going to mention as well was to talk about a few things related to tasks. So most of you know that obviously you can have a workflow that's set up in your settings with your stages, so you have consistent tasks in each stage, but sometimes you have one-off tasks where it's just a weird thing. Maybe this house has a particular type of key or a particular kind of off-the-wall thing that needs to happen. You can always add one-off tasks, and I tell people this a lot. You can add one-off tasks of any type. I can even add a one-off email task with a template if I want to do that as well. So I can do that, select from any of the templates I have, or even create a new one, and even automate it and have it automatically send out whenever I set it to be due. So I can set the due at into the future, set a reminder 15 minutes before, whenever I want to be reminded via email for that particular task. So this allows you to also have your process flex based on just the nuance of different situations. So that allows you to track those one-off tasks, and I encourage you guys to do that. As far as your task management, I'm going to jump over here, and you guys are all going to laugh because this is a demo account, so I have quite a few overdue tasks. So I'm way behind, obviously. But on the task page is something I also want to outline. You can actually action a lot of your tasks directly from the task page. So if I want to complete this email to John Smith, I can actually do that. So just checking in. Hi, John. This is a test. Send that off. And now I've actually done it for John. And I can also quickly jump in to, if I want to view that deal, and then jump straight back to the task page, which I was already looking at. So basically, you can actually action off a lot of your tasks directly from the task page without having to jump into the deal or process. But you can also jump in as well and take a look at those. So keep that in mind, as well as if you're an admin and you want to check out how everyone else is doing, you can jump into that as well. So if I want to check out how Matt's doing, I can see he's doing actually decent bit better than me. But this allows you to keep tabs on your team at a high level. It's just like, because these are all of their tasks. for any process or any deal that they are assigned to. So you can check in on that. Another thing as well, like I said earlier, if you have an overdue task, there's no reason if you're deciding, hey, I want to do this later, then you can just update the due date. So I'm going to say, hey, not going to get to this week. I want to be reminded on Monday at 9. Yeah, 9:30 is fine. Hit OK. And I want to email reminder 15 minutes beforehand, so I make sure I do that check-in call. And so now you can see it switched down here into the future. So yeah, that's kind of how you manage tasks a bit better. And again, if you guys have any questions, okay, here's one from Tiffany. I'm getting close to being able to get to questions, so I think I'm going to start with yours, Tiffany. So if you set a reminder for a task that is due immediately, will it still send the email out to the person assigned? Yes, it will. Yep. Yeah. So what LeadSimple does is it just looks for any tasks that have a reminder time set that's in the past, and then we send out the email for that. So yes, you can do that. Also, if you want to have an email automatically get sent out. So if, let's say, I just want to add an automated email here. So email, just going to grab a, create a quick test template. And have that. Obviously, most of the time, if you're going to be doing an automatic task that you're adding in a one-off way, then you're probably going to be scheduling it for the future. But I could schedule it even in the past, and it would send out pretty much right away. So obviously, don't need a reminder for an automatic email. Now it's set up. It was due yesterday, so it will get sent out right away when LeadSimple does that. So LeadSimple is sending those out every few minutes. So if you have an automated task, just leave it, and it will get sent out within a few minutes of when it was scheduled. So delete that. All right. I think we're ready for some more questions. I have some that I've already lined up that I can answer as well on the call. But if you guys have any, this is a good time to pipe up. So I don't see any in the questions area. So I don't know if you guys have any. Might be a quiet group to get today, but feel free. It doesn't have to be directly associated with what I talked about either. If you guys have some more general questions or something that I didn't cover, you can just let me know. If no one has any questions, I have a few here. So when it comes to updating your instructions as well, this is something I wanted to outline for you guys. So different tasks that have more detailed instructions. So if I jump back to the settings here, general inquiry for tenants, then we have some detailed instructions here. What's cool about this, if I jump back into tenants and create another tenant deal, so I'm just going to get rid of John Smith and recreate him. Another thing to note on this is obviously with these tenant leads, they can be automatically imported from whatever sources you have, just like we do for deals. So that's something to keep in mind. I'll add that for Alaska. Save. Then jump to general inquiry. And you can see these detailed instructions. Since I'm an admin, and as you're kind of working through the process and defining it, what I found when I was doing that, because we at LeadSimple, we use LeadSimple internally as well for our own tracking. I was finding it kind of frustrating. I was like, oh, well, it would be really nice to have detailed task instructions that I could actually edit in line. So I can actually make an edit. So I can make an edit, and now that will update it on the template work of the workflow. But this is only available to admins. So keep that in mind. Only admins will be able to do this. You won't just have one-off people making big edits to your instructions, because I know a lot of time can go into the instructions, especially when you're adding screenshots or videos, whatever it may be. Yeah, you're able as an admin to kind of update your process as you're running through it if the instructions were unclear or you want to make an edit. All right, Craig has a question. So is there a way to see the entire list of tasks at once versus just the current one? In Asana, it's nice to see all the stages at once as you move from one to the next. Not sure if there's such a view here. All right, so I think the question is basically, can you kind of see what's coming up based on the stage? So like what the future holds. Currently, that wouldn't be, basically we show you the tasks that apply in the case that you are looking at. So we're trying to have a little bit more of a scoped view of what you're really helping you focus on what you really need to do and not worry necessarily about the future in some ways, because you're supposed to be focused on this task at this particular time. But what I will say is, if you come back here to the move-in process, that one we triggered, all of these tasks were scheduled right at once because this is the first stop task. So if you want to have all of your tasks show up for any in particular stage, then you can just remove all stop tasks, and then all those tasks will get scheduled at once whenever the lead is or process is moved to a particular stage. But they would be limited to that stage. So you're only going to see the tasks that are in the stage that you're currently working, because it would be really convoluted to have all these tasks of different stages in one. So as your team gets more familiar with your process and how you have it set up, then they will obviously know what's coming next. They'll know how to use it and know how to change things. So we're trying to give you all the context you need, but not overly bog you down by showing you a ton of tasks that you can't even do at that particular time. So awesome. Okay, are there any more questions? All right, so how can I add leads to LeadSimple from tenants that schedule showings with Tenant Turner? Okay, so you can actually do that via our automatic sources. So we come up here to settings, and under sources, very similar to owners, basically any platform that sends you an email notification can be set up as an automatic source. So what will happen is Tenant Turner will send, basically you jump over here to the configure auto import, and you have those Tenant Turner leads get sent into LeadSimple to this email address, and we parse out all the information that we can get out of that email and create a new tenant lead, assign it. You can have notifications and routing just like you can for your owners. So I can add me here, and I can get, probably don't want to get a call for tenant inquiries, but I can get emailed and a text message saying with that information that's been parsed out of that email, which you may or may not need based on the use case. For owners, I think it's essential, and you can have as many people or as few as you want. You can have a backup user of who's assigned. So various, you have all the same types of settings that you can have for an owner pipeline or any of your pipelines, because this doesn't just apply to tenants. It's just we have a tenant workflow now that we totally supported before, but didn't have the content for. So now we do have content that you guys can take and customize and run with. So yeah, that's how you would work with sources, and we can include a link in the follow-up again if you guys want a refresher on how to set up your automated sources. Again, Calendly, we're seeing a lot of people just go with Calendly for scheduling their showings. If you're not familiar with it, I check it out. It's a great service that integrates with your calendar and is quite simple to use. I think Tenant Turner has something that's similar for scheduling showings. But yeah, anything that sends you an email, just like for your owners, you can set up an automated source for it. All right. Well, we've got up to about 5 minutes if we need it, but we don't have to use it if you guys don't have any more questions. If you do, feel free to pipe up now or hold your peace. Yeah, so again, today on the call, we covered a lot of like little use cases and things. Basically, my goal was to cover things that some people can miss, and by missing them, don't fully utilize LeadSimple in a way that they should. So Again, in our follow-up, we're going to include a link to this pipeline and the content, if that's something that you're interested in wanting to set up. And then I'll include a link to setting up automated sources as a refresher for all of you. And yeah, so it looks like not getting any more questions. I'm so happy you guys were all able to get on. I hope this was useful for you. If you have any feedback, totally let us know. If you have any burning topics that you really want to hear about, we're lining up webinars into the future. So we're kind of categorizing the different topics right now. And if you guys have something you really want to hear about, we're totally all ears. And we'll be sending out an invite for that in not too long. So look out for that. Look out for a follow-up email from this. If you want to share this recording, it will be accessible at this link, and it'll be on our blog shortly. So, that's a good idea, Steve. Yeah. So contractor jobs or work orders. I think we're definitely planning to cover that. How to set up a work order process in LeadSimple. So there's so many different ideas, and we're really excited to continue to move into all these different use cases, because as you can see, this is a really flexible platform. And you can really use it in a lot of different ways. So looking forward to moving into this new season. Hopefully you guys all stay safe and well, and hopefully this whole crisis is past us in not too long. That's definitely my personal hope. So thanks so much for getting on, everybody. Hopefully, Craig. Yep, Matthew, we'll follow up with that. Sounds great. Awesome, guys. Thanks so much for being on, and we'll be talking soon. You'll get an invite to the next webinar for sure. All right. Bye.